Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel, and today I'm going to be taking another look at the 2024 presidential election. But before I start, I'd like to say if you like my content, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you know when we upload, and also leave a like and comment. With that said, let's get into it. So last time I looked at what would happen if we saw a rematch of the 2020 election and saw President Joe Biden face a challenge from former President Donald Trump. But today I'm going to see what will happen if Joe Biden faces a challenge from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Right now, there's a big discussion among Republicans whether Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis should be the nominee in 2024, so I thought I'd make a video about both of them and how they would do. So I'm going to start by filling in the solid Democrat states, and those are going to be the states of Washington, Oregon, California, Hawaii, Illinois, Maryland, Delaware, I forgot to fill in Illinois, New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Vermont, Maine's 1st Congressional District, and Washington, D.C. I'm also going to fill in Colorado as solid Democrat because even though Ron DeSantis would probably do better here than Trump did in 2020, Colorado's trending left so quickly that I don't even think he'd be able to get it within 10 points, so I am calling Colorado solid Democrat. As for the solid states for Ron DeSantis, we have North and South Dakota, Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, Nebraska at large and its 1st and 3rd congressional districts, Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, and West Virginia, as well as the state of South Carolina. I'm also going to add the state of Iowa because it's trending right basically as fast as Colorado is trending left. Republicans had a great year in Iowa in 2022. I think Trump and DeSantis would both probably win Iowa by 10 points or more. I'm also adding Alaska to the solid Republican column because I had it as likely in the Trump video, but I think DeSantis would perform better here than Trump would, and so I am calling it solid Republican. And finally, I'm going to add the state of Florida to the solid Republican column for several reasons. One, this state has been trending right. Two, Ron DeSantis is from this state. He just had a huge victory in 2022, a 19-point victory, and he's not going to win Florida by 19 points in the presidential general election, but he probably still will win it by over 10 points, so I'm calling Florida solid Republican. So now I'm going to fill in the likely states for Joe Biden, and I'm going to start with the state of New Mexico. New Mexico is a state that Joe Biden barely won by 10 points in 2020, and I believe Ron DeSantis will do better than Trump 2020 in this state because of the Hispanic population in this state. Ron DeSantis tends to do pretty well with Hispanics, even outside of the Cubans that are the biggest Hispanic group in Florida that vote for Republicans. So I do think he's going to get New Mexico within 10 points. I still think it's probably going to be like an 8 or 9 point margin. So I am calling it likely Democrat. Next up is going to be the state of Minnesota. Minnesota is easily the furthest left of the big four Rust Belt states that are competitive right now. And Joe Biden won it by over 7 points in 2020. I think maybe he would win it by a slightly smaller margin, but I still think it would fall into the likely column. So I am putting it in the likely column. Next up are going to be the states of Maine and New Hampshire. I'm lumping these in together because they're very similar states, both very white states that are also very liberal. And I think that DeSantis could make a little bit of ground in these states from where Trump was in 2020. I still think they would both fall in the likely column, though. The final likely Democrat state is going to be the state of Virginia. Joe Biden won this one by a little over 10 points in 2020, and like I've been saying all video, I think DeSantis can make some inroads with white suburbanites. But I also think it's possible that Virginia is trending right slightly, mostly because Governor Glenn Youngkin was elected in 2021, and he seems to be having a very high approval rating ever since he was inaugurated. And obviously gubernatorial approval and elections are different from federal elections, but the thing is that having a strong governor of one party can push a state in the direction of that governor's party. For example, in Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis has been a very strong governor, and now Florida is trending to the right. I think at this point, Joe Biden would probably win Virginia by 6 or 7 points, but I think it is possible that we see a lean Democrat Virginia in the future. So next up, I'm going to do the likely Republican states, starting with the state of Ohio. Ohio could very well be solid Republican, just like Iowa. Republicans had a great year in 2022, but Ohio still is clearly to the left of Iowa. I think DeSantis would come just shy of 10 points in this state. It's been trending in the same direction, really, as the whole Rust Belt, but especially like Iowa and Indiana and Wisconsin. Like I said, I think DeSantis would probably come just shy of 10 points, so I'm calling it likely Republican, but I do think that it could be solid Republican. I'm also going to put Maine's 2nd congressional district in the likely Republican column. Trump actually won this district by 10 points in 2016, and then he won it by 6 in 2020. I think DeSantis would perform in between there, so I am calling Maine's 2nd likely Republican. Finally, I'm going to put the state of Texas in the likely Republican column. Texas has been trending left, although it's been at a much slower pace than many people anticipated. Donald Trump won the state in 2020 by a little less than 6 points, and Republicans had a good year here in 2022. And as I've mentioned before in this video, Ron DeSantis is popular among Hispanics, so I think he'd be able to maintain most of the gains that Trump made in the Rio Grande Valley, if not expand them, and I think he'd do better in the suburbs in Texas, and so I do think he'd win Texas by a likely margin. So that is all of the solid and likely states for either candidate done. Joe Biden starting at 225 and Ron DeSantis is starting at 219, so this is pretty close to start. I'm going to go through the toss-up states, west to east, starting with the state of Nevada. Now, Nevada is a state that's been trending right for basically since the 2008 presidential election. It's swung right in every election since then. And although Republicans had a lackluster year in Nevada in 2022, they did still pick up the governorship here against incumbent Democrat Steve Sisolak, and that is worth noting. As I mentioned earlier, Ron DeSantis has been doing well with Hispanics, and I think he would do better with white suburbanites, and that's basically what you need to win Nevada. I think DeSantis would probably pick up Nevada and win it by a couple points, probably 2 to 3, so I am calling Nevada lean Republican. Next up is the state of Arizona. Now, a big reason that Donald Trump lost Arizona in 2020 and that Kari Lake lost the governor's race here in 2022 is because they kind of talked smack about John McCain and John McCain supporters, and so they ended up losing largely in part because of that. And they both did lose very narrowly, but that isn't the only thing that's happening in Arizona. Arizona is trending left because of demographic changes as well. And so even though Ron DeSantis does not have those problems that Trump and Lake did have, he still probably would have a tough time winning this state. When you look at Arizona's 2022 results, Democrats swept almost every statewide election except, I believe, the treasurer's race. And not every candidate said something bad about John McCain, so obviously there is something deeper there. So this isn't an auto flip for DeSantis like a lot of people probably think it is. That being said, because of how narrowly Trump and Lake both lost this state by, I do think that DeSantis would be able to very narrowly flip it back despite the trends. DeSantis seems like the kind of candidate who would do well in the southwestern United States, and so I do think that he'd pick up Arizona very narrowly, so I'm calling Arizona tilt Republican. Next up is Nebraska's 2nd congressional district, and I think Joe Biden probably wins this one by 4 or 5 points. This district did get more Republican in redistricting, and Ron DeSantis obviously does not have the same suburban problems that Trump does, but the suburbs are just trending against Republicans at large, no matter whether they're Trump Republicans or not, so I do think DeSantis would probably still lose this district by a couple points. Next up is the state of Wisconsin, and this one is honestly really tough for me to call. I think it'll probably be one of the closest states. For Ron DeSantis to win the state of Wisconsin, he's going to have to get Trump's rural performances, but do well in the suburbs and probably get Ron Johnson's performance in the WOW counties, which is going to be really difficult to do. He's going to have to get somewhere in there. I think he probably would narrowly win the state of Wisconsin, like extremely narrowly, less than 1 point, but I am calling Wisconsin tilt Republican. DeSantis does seem to have rural appeal. I mean, he won Florida by 19 points, and obviously that's a midterm election, that's different. But it does show that he doesn't suffer as much in the rurals as a lot of Trump people seem to think he would. And while he wouldn't do as well as Johnson in certain areas, I do still think he would do well enough to win the state. He doesn't need to do as well as Johnson as long as he does close to Trump's performances in the rurals. So that's why I do believe he would very narrowly flip the state of Wisconsin. Next up is the state of Michigan, and Michigan is the second bluest of these 4 states next to Minnesota. Michigan clearly is still at the very least a lean blue state. I mean, Gretchen Whitmer won the governor election here by 10 points in 2022. Against other candidates, I think maybe DeSantis or even Trump would have a chance, but since Joe Biden's the incumbent here and he seems to have good Rust Belt strength, I am calling Michigan lean lean Democrat. Next up is the state of Georgia. Now, Georgia is a state that's rapidly been trending left. It surprisingly flipped for Biden in 2020, and Republicans didn't have a stellar year here. On the federal level, Herschel Walker lost to Raphael Warnock, although Brian Kemp was reelected by a pretty wide margin here, and I think Republicans won all the other state offices. I think DeSantis would do better in Georgia than Trump would in 2024, but I think Georgia is just trending left too quickly for any Republican to win this on the federal level in the near future. So I am calling Georgia tilt Democrat. It's going to be close, but I do think that Joe Biden would narrowly win it. Next up is the state of North Carolina, and I actually think that North Carolina is kind of a sleeper pick for a flip for Joe Biden in 2024. Although I do not think he's going to win it, I think it's possible. I think DeSantis probably wins it by a couple points. North Carolina has been trending towards Democrats. Trump won it narrowly in 2020, and Republicans underperformed here in 2022, although they kind of underperformed almost everywhere. But especially in North Carolina, they lost a congressional seat that they were supposed to win, and the Senate race was a lot closer than it was supposed to be. So I do think North Carolina is going to be more Democrat than people realize. I do still think DeSantis is probably going to win it by around 2 points, so I am calling it lean Republican. Finally, we have the state of Pennsylvania, and of course it all comes down to Pennsylvania. To win Pennsylvania, Ron DeSantis really is going to need to do well in the rurals. We saw in 2022, Dr. Oz did not really collapse that much in the cities and the suburbs, but he did kind of collapse in the rurals, and ultimately John Fetterman won by almost 5 points. I think Joe Biden probably wins this state by like a little more than 2 points. I think DeSantis, he won't collapse in the rurals, but I don't think he's going to do as well as Trump did, and I don't think that his gains in the suburbs are going to be enough to counteract it. I think Biden will probably win by more than 2 points, so I am calling Pennsylvania lean Democrat. And with that, I do have Joe Biden very narrowly winning re-election against Ron DeSantis, 276 to 262. I had DeSantis flipping Nevada, Wisconsin, and Arizona, and Joe Biden holding everything else. And obviously, we're still almost 2 years out from this election, but this is where I see it standing right now. Joe Biden's approval has been going up, especially after the midterms, and it looks like he might be the nominee. There has been stuff coming out about him having classified documents, and we'll have to see how that affects his approval among the country and among Democrats. But for now, I think that he'll be the nominee, and I think even if he goes up against Ron DeSantis, he'll probably narrowly win. But again, of course, things can change very rapidly in politics, so this is nowhere near my final prediction. But with that said, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you like my content, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you know when we upload. And also leave a like and comment telling me what you think. Thank you guys so much for watching and have a great day.